A very fine good evening to everyone. Today we have Mr. Fernand Alberto. He is a EVP, Legal and Regulatory Affairs, Star India. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, as we know that you are here for a sessions of content protection. So when we see a content in any kind of episode in the YouTube or in any social media, so there is one kind of copyright is there. Someone follow the content, someone copy the content. How do you see these things, and what are the actually policies and guidelines behind this?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that there's really no silver bullet when it comes to fighting piracy. Right. But if we want, as a creative industry, I'm representing the channels and the broadcasters, if we want to get ahead of the pirates, we've got to use and deploy technology in our anti-piracy measures. And by that I mean there has to be the first aspect of the anti-piracy technology is prevention. We've got to use the right DRM, the right CAS, conditional access system, in order to prevent leakage, right? But the second part, which I think is more important, is making sure that you're able to trace the source.
Exactly.
That is significant. And one good news is that nowadays we can trace the source in ways that we could not in the past, and that's done by forensic watermarking. That's one good news. Unfortunately, there are two bad news, because even if you're able to trace the source of the pirate, you're not going to completely eradicate piracy. You're just going to displace them. They'll go to other permissive territories where enforcement is not as strict as other territories, right? And the second bad news is that when it comes to peer-to-peer, which I think is the most predominant form of piracy in India, by its very nature, P2P does not reside in a central server, right? It's on a peer-based driven technology. So it is hard to trace the source of a P2P piracy.
Okay. Most of the times we see in a TV or on any YouTube or any kind of social networking that this episode or this kind of a broadcast has been already shown before, and some people are copying it, or in the names of remake, where the same content with the different actors, different artists is being played again. So what actually the guideline is there, what one need to follow the guideline so that he can go for a remake, he can go for a copying the things, copying the contents?
I don't see this so much of a piracy issue as copying of a format, actually, because every copyright owner, whenever you produce a creative work, you own the format of that. Of course, there are some conditions there in terms of protecting a format and the look and feel of your program. But you're right. There's a lot of like spin-offs and sequels. So remember that if you're a copyright owner, number one, you have the exclusive right to translate your own work. You have the exclusive right to do your own sequels and your spin-offs. So the moment anyone copies that, and if you see that it's confusingly similar with what you've done, then there could be some causes of action. But it really depends on the jurisdiction. It really depends on how the copyright law is couched in each territory.
Right. And nowadays we are seeing some original shows in different channels. For example, Netflix, and
it's okay. I got it.
Okay. So these are in the name of the originals, where the copyright, you cannot find the kind of duplication or copying some other content and putting in their episodes. So this is something you have also shared, like you have a dedicated team who look after this and to restrict this kind of content, to making this copying from the thing. We would like to know about your way forward plan down the line 5 years. How do you see this kind of protection is very important in the coming years?
In terms of the protection, how do we protect original content? First of all, for a lot of OTT services that are proliferating now, what is key is to provide compelling content to the consumers, and that's why you have this, what you mentioned, the original content, right? It's important to protect original content, and it's not going to be an overnight solution. You've got to have a long-term plan in place. And I repeat again, for me, in order for broadcasters and creators to get ahead of the pirates, it's extremely important to deploy the right technology. Like, it should be an anti-piracy technology-based driven approach. It may sound simple, but technology cannot solve piracy by itself, right? Of course, it requires a great variety of intervention. That requires an intervention among the other stakeholders, a collaborative approach. That's extremely important.
Last but not the least, any message for the different channels, different YouTubers, and different the people who is working in different contents and showing them in a terms of episodes and all, how they can protect this kind of thing in the best possible way, so they can avoid this kind of content repeating or copying the contents. Your message for the
Sure, every creator has to monitor his content. However, there has to be a collaborative approach, and I keep on emphasizing that, because when you strategize or set in place your strategy in terms of protecting content, you've got to step back and ask yourself the question: what is your objective? The objective here is to protect the creative industry, which plays a major role in terms of helping the economy and creating jobs, and also to encourage innovation. The immediate objective is to increase or at least maintain the legitimate market and make it hard for pirates to make the content that is made available by the pirates commercially unviable. And how do you do that? Make pirated content less attractive,
Yes.
and at the same time make your legitimate content more compelling.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for giving a valuable time for this episode. Thank you. Yeah, all the best for your sessions. Yeah.